In the haze of war and diplomacy, a new question now looms over Gaza's fragile future. The aftermath of the recent Gaza conflict has left the territory in urgent need of rebuilding governance and, of course, basic services. Following U.S. President Donald Trump's new post-war plan, a transitional authority is proposed to manage Gaza temporarily through a technocratic Palestinian committee. The European Union, traditionally a major financial donor to the Palestinians, has expressed strong interest in taking on a meaningful political and operational role in this transitional phase. So can the European Union move beyond donor status and become a political and operational actor in Gaza's interim rule? And what could be the motive for such a shift? And can Brussels deliver substance rather than symbolism? What might this mean for the Palestinians and the broader future of international peace building? Tonight on Think Tank, we explore the proposition. After calling for participation, can the European Union play an effective role in Gaza's transitional authority? I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi. Stay tuned.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
The Times of Israel states that the European Union is actively seeking a role in U.S. President Donald Trump's transitional authority for Gaza. EU top diplomat Kaja Kallas tells reporters, "Yes, we feel that Europe has a great role and we should also be on board with this." Kallas said, confirming the EU's desire to join Trump's Board of Peace, emphasizing that the EU is not only a major humanitarian donor, but also a political actor. She insisted that Europe must be not only a payer, but also a player. Speaking at an EU Gulf Cooperation Council meeting in Kuwait, Kallas highlighted that the EU is working closely with Arab partners who recognize the value of European involvement and expressed hope that Israel will also agree to the EU's participation. This marks a significant step in expanding the EU's role from donor to active participant in Gaza's transitional governance under Trump's 20-point post-war plan.
We believe that Europe has an important role and that we should also be part of that. With those words, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas set the tone for a debate that could redefine Europe's role in one of the world's most intractable conflicts, signaling a new phase in the EU's engagement with the Gaza crisis. Her statement echoed through Brussels corridors, suggesting that the European Union might finally be ready to act, not merely pay. As Washington advances its post-war Gaza Transitional Authority, European diplomats see both opportunity and risk. For decades, the EU has been Gaza's largest donor, yet always from the sidelines. Now, under the US plan, Brussels could join a temporary technocratic administration managing public services, reconstruction, and institutional recovery, shifting its role from financier to stakeholder. Inside EU institutions, debates are intense. Northern states push for engagement linked to governance reform, while southern members, notably France and Spain, frame it as a moral duty to stabilize the region. The EU's readiness includes substantial resources, 1.6 billion euros allocated for humanitarian and development aid through 2027, and governance expertise built on diplomatic ties with both Israel and the Palestinian Authority. Yet challenges remain, particularly over Israel's response. If successful, the EU's participation could restore essential services, rebuild institutions, and set a model for European leadership in future conflict transitions. Kallis's call reflects a growing recognition that Gaza's stability is inseparable from Europe's own security and moral standing, testing the true limits of EU diplomacy and resolve.
To discuss the potentials and challenges of the European Union's proposed role in Gaza, Think Tank is joined by two experts deeply engaged in this issue. From Cairo, we're joined by Dr. Nourhan Sheikh, political science professor, who offers insights on European interests and political dynamics, of course, influencing the initiative. And joining also is Mr. Majid Boudin, an international law professor from Paris, who will shed light on the legal and diplomatic implications of the EU's involvement. So together, they will explore whether the EU's participation could turn the transitional authority into a successful experiment in governance in Gaza. Welcome to Qnews. I would start with you, Professor Nourhan. Now, what are the main motives driving the European Union now to propose active participation in Gaza's transitional authority?
Good evening, Hal, and it is always a pleasure to join you.
Thank you.
Actually, I think there are two main motives driving the EU positions from Gaza. First, that the displacement of Palestinians may lead to waves of migration toward Europeans, because yes, Egypt is a border state, but I think that they will not stay forever in Egypt. They would, by way or another, trying to pass by Egypt toward Europe and toward the Gulf states, by the way. Mm-hmm. So Europe, I think one of its main motives is to prevent such migration, which would be illegal migration toward Europe. In a time they are already suffering from illegal migration, and there are a wide movement among European countries to stop it by way or another, led by Italy and PM Meloni. Mm-hmm. The second motive, from my point of view, is that public opinion and wide demonstrations we witnessed in Europe. I think the pressure exercising from people inside the European Union is becoming very obvious in all European countries, including even those who are not now EU countries like Britain. And I think that wide social movements and the pressure they exercise on the government push the government to listen, not only on EU level, but even on the national level, to listen to what they are calling for. And we witnessed some resigns in Holland and elsewhere, protesting the formal or the policies of the government. So I think that also considered one of the main factors pushing EU toward more involvement in peace process and in finding a solution to ceasefire in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. Professor Boudin, now, how does the EU's proposed participation in Gaza's transitional authority align with the international law principles regarding sovereignty and self-determination?
Well, this is the key issue. Today, the Palestinians are faced by a strong Israeli state who is not keen to accept the rising of a Palestinian state on the ground. And the equation here is that the US are supporting Israel, whatever are the reasons, but they are supporting Israel in fact, and the solution they are proposing is a deal. When you have a deal, you have a weak party and you have a strong party. Here, the strong party is Israel, and the weak party, very, very weak party, is the Palestinian state. Here, the shield and the only party in the world which is able to recall that a deal must be done on the base of international law is the EU. This is a very important value of the EU, and the EU will not make a bargain without satisfying the rules of international law. And this is the shield, and this is the ground on which the Palestinians can construct their state in a safe way and in a protected way. And the EU will provide this tool, and this is very important for the Palestinians and for a peaceful solution and a sustainable peace solution.
Definitely. Professor Nurhan, now, how does this initiative align with the diverse interests of EU member states?
Actually, this is one of the problematic of EU because, yes, there are a huge movement in the street toward supporting Gaza and ceasefire in Gaza, but unfortunately, some of the governments of EU are not that much encouraging toward that, and they are not that much supportive to international law, by the way, not only for the rights of Palestinians, but it is international law rules and principles. Unfortunately, some governments are still not that much keen to be involved with. But I think the EU, as EU, Brussels, I mean, they now clearly having a clear attitude, positive toward ceasefire, toward facilitating the assistance to Palestinian people. And they are declared that they would be more and more involved in the peace process. And this is logic, because if we back to Madrid in 1991, the European Union was one of the main powers who are supervising and facilitating peace process. They are also a member in Quartet committee that's created by the UN. I think 20 years ago. Yes, it was froze by the way or another, but it still exists as a legal umbrella for facilitating and pushing the peace process between Israeli and Palestinians. So EU has already a role, and it is now the time to make it effective and to play real role, not only just that legal one, but to be real and to help facilitate release the humanitarian situation in Gaza, as well as pushing the negotiation in Sharm el-Sheikh talk.
Yes. Professor Boudin, what legal challenges, we're talking about the legal perspective here, so the legal challenges that could arise from the EU's operational role in Gaza, especially concerning the coordination with Israel and the Palestinian Authority?
The EU has a very long experience in the cooperation with the Palestinian Authority and with the Israeli authorities. So it had this experience. And funding, it's the major funding party to the Palestinian, more than 60 billion euros. So this amount was spent already, and more will come. And the EU wanted to do that. What are the obstacles that we have to overcome to come to a practical situation? It's a fact that within the EU, we have different policies. We have, for example, Hungary. They are supporting Israel completely, not Hungary but the government of Hungary, Hungary. We have seen the shifting 2 days ago in Czechia. We have the right wing coming in Czechia and in Slovakia. And we can also understand the difficulties of a slight point, at least, the difficulties of the French president, Emmanuel Macron. It's coming because of his very important and decisive decisions in the international field with Ukraine, and especially by recognizing the Palestinian state. And he is paying today with the instability of the government. It has a very political roots, it's internal political roots. But we cannot ignore that his dedication to obtain the recognition and to have created this dynamics to recognize the Palestinian state has a price. And he's paying this price now, but we hope that all this will lead to a stabilized role of the EU to impose effectively a peaceful settlement in an equitable way. And the EU has the role. There is no obstacle for it among all these about these things that we can overcome. But legally speaking, they have the expertise, they have the will. The Palestinians are accepting the EU, and they are supportive to this solution. So there is no.
Yes, which is good enough. Which is good enough for now, until further notice. Professor Nurhan, now, to what extent are member states in the EU aligned on this idea, or do internal divisions within European countries threaten to block meaningful engagement?
I think there are now some consensus over that. Yes, some countries are still reluctant to.
So there is window of opportunity here.
Yes.
Especially as Professor Boudin said, they have the experience.
Yes, but at least Brussels now have a clear attitude toward involving in peace process. They are pushing forward it. Some European leaders have very, very positive and advanced progressive positions, like Spain, like France, even Britain, those all countries who recognize the Palestinian state and recognize Palestinian Authority. I think this is very important, and they are leading powers within EU and within Europe in general. So I think there is some consensus to leave those leading powers doing what they are doing, and the others will not block what they are doing to do.
Okay.
So this is very important. At least those who are not that much active or progressive toward the Palestinian, they will not block the efforts of the EU. This is what I think.
Professor Boudin, how does the transitional authority model fits within the UN mandates or resolutions on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
The UN mandate is a tool which is available. It was experienced in...
to be applied by the EU in this case?
Yes, it could be applied by the EU, at least to be covered, authorized by the EU, because we have the EU decisions on this field in Eritrea, and we have it in Kosovo, we have it in Bosnia. So this it's a tool which was being developed, experienced, and has legal basis. This is UN mandate. So the Palestinian state could be put under a UN mandate for a provisional situation, a transitional situation, until the whole situation become mature to have elections and free decisions. The point here is to have this mandate covering not only Gaza, but all Palestinian territory. It means Gaza, it means also the West Bank and Eastern Jerusalem. Okay. So the borders before the 4th of June 1967, which is admitted internationally. So this is important to not divide the Palestinian state today and to deal with Gaza only, but to have a mandate over all this, or over all
the Palestinian territories.
And the other point is that whatever the technical staff international or local, they must have the legitimacy of a UN mandate and the UN supervision, and with a full transparency and state what are the rules which will be governing this transitional period, and to have again the EU on board is important, because it's a party who is reminding the rules and sticking to the rules, and they are guaranteeing that these will be executed and observed.
Yes.
And there is an important point that here the Arab states must have a strategical cooperation and union with at least a strategic cooperation with the EU, with the UN in different fields. We have seen that how for instance, the Egyptian candidate was elected at the UNESCO, and it's a good achievement in this cooperation. In the next future, we will have the French candidate, which will be in the International Court of Justice, and it's important that the Arab countries, the African countries, sharing the same values than the French candidate and the European candidate, have to support this, because today we have an ICJ which composition could be changed.
I get your point, Professor, but here is the focus on the EU mainly. So I would go back to Professor Nourhan al-Sheikh. Professor Nourhan, how much pressure from European civil society, humanitarian NGOs, public opinion, is there like inside Europe either demanding or opposing such participation?
I think there are wide and very important, huge pressure from the civil society, from people. We saw demonstration, huge demonstration in nearly all European capital, and there are a wide sentiment toward Palestinian state and Palestinian people. We saw now people raising the Palestinian flag, they putting the Palestinian flag on and some other samples of Palestinian people and the state on their clothes, on their necks, etc. So I think this is very positive, and everywhere any officials or any government people, they will say Palestine, and they say recognize the sentiment toward Palestine rights. So I think this is very important, very huge. We saw it also in the parliament, and actually a number of members of the parliament in different countries played very important role in raising the Palestinian Authority and trying to redirect their policies toward more positive attitude toward Palestine.
Professor Boudin, now, what legal safeguards should be in place to ensure the protection of human rights and humanitarian law during the EU's involvement in Gaza?
Well, it's the first guarantee that the international community should impose, that Israel will not use any arms or force or military operations, and will also restrict their military operations in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And this is the guarantee. And here the international community must request the US to be the guarantor of this with the EU, and to have the UN, a UN force to be there on the ground, and this is important, and to guarantee the freedom and the rights of the Palestinian population, whomever is ruling or administrating, even for a provisional situation, the population in Gaza. It's very important for these people, after this killing and this starvation, that they can feel as human beings with their human rights observed in a sustainable way, and we have to have a controlling system. How we can guarantee this? This peace plan is okay, it's fine. Now the parties must work on the details, and as we know, the devil is hidden in the details, and the details must be the working on the guarantees.
Yes, which is in progress, Professor, which is currently being discussed as we speak. Professor Nurhan, what diplomatic channels does the EU rely on to gain acceptance from key regional actors?
The EU has long ago connections and relations with all countries in the region and with the Palestinian Authority itself. Now there are some European representatives also trying to facilitate the negotiation between Israel and Hamas in Sharm el-Sheikh, because you may know that Sharm el-Sheikh talks is not a direct negotiation. It is indirect through other delegations, most important Egyptian one, Qatarian one also, as well as the American one. European is there also trying to facilitate those negotiations. European Union also was very close to Egypt, and continuous consultation between Egypt and the Cairo and Brussels also was always there, and to facilitate what is going on, either aid or assistance, negotiation, etc. So I think they have many channels through which they can facilitate not only the assistance and aid to Palestinian people, but most important right now, it is the talks and negotiation in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Mm-hmm. Professor Boudin, how might this EU proposal intersect with the peace plan formulated by the US, and what tensions might arise, in your own opinion?
I mean, it's converging. The position of the EU is converging with the US proposal. And it will make it better. This influence is very positive. We have to remember how the negotiations were between the US and Ukraine, and how when the EU leaders and states have pushed and made all efforts to support Ukraine, how the US administration has shifted its position. So this is why it's very important to coordinate with the EU, that the EU will be supportive to this solution, and to use its influence, its positive influence on the US, to obtain a satisfactory solution, which will be based on the deal, on the bargain, but that the bargain will observe the rights and the fundamental rights of the Palestinian population and the Palestinian state.
Mm-hmm. Professor Nurhan, how might Israel, both as current occupying force, of course, respond to EU participation in the transitional structure?
Israel right now is not paying that much signs toward a positive attitude or a negotiation of facilitating a consensus or some kind of agreement, because up to the date they are pumping people in Gaza. There is no ceasefire. So a lot of dilemmas, exactly. Yes, we start a second round of negotiation today in Sharm el-Sheikh, but there are still many difficulties concerning those talks. And I think the most important obstacle that comes from Israel, because Hamas accepting many things, actually, like returning back all detainees, and to also give up its arms to some Egyptian Palestinian entity. But up to the date, Israel didn't give any signs to help facilitating the negotiations.
Yes, I get your point. Yes, I get your point. I'd like to thank you so much, Professor Nurhan al-Sheikh. Thank you so much. And also Professor Majid Boudin. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your valuable insights and analysis with us today. And this episode unpacked the challenges and possibilities of Europe's new role in Gaza's fragile future. It remains to be seen if the EU can transition from donor to active political player in Gaza's reconstruction. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. I'm Hannah Al-Hamalawi. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.